The Detroit Lions are one of the most interesting teams for this NFL offseason. They've got 2 first-round picks. They've got some salary cap space, and they could make some real improvements after what was an interesting season. Of course, they finished the year on a high note with a win over the Green Bay Packers. And after Week 18 now, of course, no playoffs for the Lions to play for. We're going to turn our head to an offseason preview here for the Detroit Lions. I know we have a lot of Detroit fans in general on our channel. So make sure you guys leave a like if you are a Detroit Lions fan. Also subscribe if you are new to the channel. And leave comments if you're a fan of other teams, which team you would like to see us do next. I do have a New York Jets one planned as well coming out soon. But we're starting off here with the Detroit Lions because, like I said, I think they're one of the most interesting teams. Based off of how much they can improve this offseason, there's a lot of opportunities for this team to get better. And please, again, smash that like button. Let's try and get 100 likes on today's video. I know that's lofty. Let's try and get there. We'll see if we can do it. And Lions fans, there's a lot to be excited about. So let's get into it now here with what our video is going to be focusing on here for this offseason preview. First, we're going to talk about head coach Dan Campbell. Year one takeaways, my thoughts on him for the long term there in Detroit. Roster outlook. Who's already on the roster? Who do they have to maybe look to bring back? And then we go into free agency, of course. The natural order of things here. After you re-sign some of your own guys, you go out into the marketplace and try and bring in some more talent. And then you've also got draft picks. So the NFL draft is what we're going to conclude this video on. The Detroit Lions have a ton of assets, have a ton of ways to improve this football team. And I'm really excited for them. Lions fans, you should definitely be excited for this offseason. No, it was a down year. One that was probably tough to watch at certain points. But going into next season, you guys are going to be better. You guys are going to be more competitive. And I'm very, very excited for that for you. Moving into Dan Campbell, my thoughts on him in his first season. Of course, the Lions finished 3-13-1. So not a very attractive record. But given how much talent or lack of talent there really was on this football team, Lions fans, you should have a sense of pride with Dan Campbell being your head coach. I was a little nervous about him coming in from New Orleans. Never had really a big coordinator role, but he showed a lot of promise in his first year being an NFL head coach. He made some gutsy decisions. He ended up relieving an offensive coordinator of their job and play calling duty specifically. And he was very, very open to making changes that needed to be made. He even questioned Jared Goff at a certain point in the season. He did some of the hard stuff that is really hard for a first-year head coach to do and showed a lot of promise. And I think one thing also that he really showed was his willingness to adapt and learn on the fly. I think that's one of the most underrated characteristics in good coaching. To be a good coach, you have to acknowledge that you can learn and that there are things that you're not going to get right away and ways to adjust. And I think that Dan Campbell does that. I think he's going to be actually a pretty solid head coach. And one thing I want to point out too for the Lions, even when they didn't have the most talent, they weren't getting outworked. They worked very, very hard every single down, it felt like, this season. Dan Campbell had these boys playing, and he had them playing hard. And I think that is a characteristic in a head coach that can't go unnoticed. Dan Campbell deserves a lot of credit for those 3 wins and 1 tie. To tie the Steelers, to beat the Minnesota Vikings, to beat the Green Bay Packers, even in a Week 18 game, when they weren't playing all their starters down the stretch. It still takes work. They're still NFL games. Dan Campbell did his best to prepare his team, and they played very competitive. They also lost on a number of game-winning field goals. You think back to Justin Tucker hitting a game-winning field goal. I believe the Minnesota Vikings also in one of their 2 games this year hit a game-winning field goal against the Lions. There was a lot of those where the Lions were very, very close in games. Very easily, they could have ended up winning 5-6 games if a couple of field goals go awry. So a lot of credit to Dan Campbell in his first year with the Detroit Lions. I think he's going to be there for quite some time, honestly. I'm buying into it. I was questioning it at the beginning, but I think he actually is a pretty solid hire for the Detroit Lions. Moving now into our roster outlook. Remember, this is where we're going to talk about who's currently on the roster and maybe a key guy or 2 that they have to look to try and retain in their own re-sign period. And for me, key offensive players under contract. We're going to start with the quarterback, Jared Goff. He's got a dead cap money of $35 million. So he's not getting released. He's going to be on the roster. Now, I don't think it takes away the possibility of them drafting QB at some point during the NFL draft, but I think it makes it less likely that you see that second overall. And I think Jared Goff is probably going to be the starter week 1 next season. Running back DeAndre Swift, really the key player on this team. He's their go-to guy consistently. They also have running back Jamal Williams spelling him actually a pretty solid 1-2 punch at the running back spot. Jamal Williams really good in the pass game. DeAndre Swift not bad in the pass game himself either. I know that he's pretty famous for the one drop that he had that could have won them a game back in his rookie season. But DeAndre Swift, a really nice weapon for the Detroit Lions. Amon-Ra St. Brown really came on as a rookie this year for the Detroit Lions. He had over 800 yards, had about 80 so catches. Really productive season for someone who was not a first or second round pick. The Lions did really well scooping him up. I know on the channel, though, I've been very critical of what the Lions really do have at wide receiver because they still need more help. To have only one notable wide receiver on your roster going into the offseason, not going to get it done. Tight end, TJ Hawkinson, also Shane Zylstra included on here. TJ Hawkinson, of course, one of their best players. Could argue that he is the most important offensive player ahead of DeAndre Swift. That definitely would be something that would make some sense. But looking at TJ Hawkinson, he's going to catch a ton of balls. He's going to score some touchdowns, and he's going to be a security blanket for whatever quarterback is the starter for the Detroit Lions going into next season. And Shane Zylstra I included on here because he's a former wideout, played D2 football for Minnesota State Mavericks in Mankato, and I think that he's someone who has some upside at tight end. He was not going to be a really good outside wide receiver because he's not very fast for a wide receiver, but for a tight end, he's fairly athletic. He's got good size at 6'5", and he can be a weapon. He's strong, solid in the run game, and I do think he ends up becoming that long-term number 2 tight end for the Detroit Lions. Now, and this is really the strength of their team right now. Look at this offensive line. Taylor Decker, Penei Sewell, your starting tackles. Hal Vaitai at guard. He also has been a tackle historically, so you have a swing tackle there in him as well. Tyrell Crosby's a free agent, so they probably want to look to bring him back potentially if they're not comfortable with Vaitai having to be a swing tackle. Jonah Jackson in at right guard, and Frank Ragnow, a really good center. The Detroit Lions are really set along the offensive line. I think that they should look maybe in one of the later rounds to try and find another tackle potentially, give them a little bit more depth at swing tackle if they decide to not bring back Tyrell Crosby. But for the most part, this offensive line is fleshed out. You're pretty solid here. There's some areas where you could probably improve, but I think continuity is one of the best ways to improve. And I think keeping these 5 together would probably be for the best for the Detroit Lions. They don't have a ton of cap space. They have some. I wouldn't expect them to use it on an offensive lineman. And I would not expect them to use a day 1 or even maybe day 2 pick on an offensive lineman either, just based off what the strengths of their team are. And now as we transition here into the defense, there's a few players I want to highlight here as well. Starting off with edge Trey Flowers. He's owed $16.5 million. I believe he comes with a $12.5 million dead cap number, so they could save $4 million by releasing him, but then you don't have him playing for you. He's a trade target, trade candidate. Maybe if they eat some of that salary, renegotiate his deal to get him out of Detroit, that could make some sense. They'd have to give him a longer deal for whatever team wants to acquire Trey Flowers. Very likely could be the New England Patriots if they're looking for another edge. Would not be surprised about a reunion with Trey Flowers going back to New England. But then really the 2 edges I do really think are going to be key factors for Detroit next year. Romeo Okwara and Julian Okwara, of course, the brothers there. Romeo has had more production in his career so far, and it's just quite frankly the better of the 2. But I think Julian Okwara does have some nice upside. Took him last year, and I think he's got pretty solid career ahead of him when you're considering what he could end up being. I think he's more of a situational pass rusher. I would like to see them grab another edge at some point in the draft, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later on in this video. Defensive line. Last year they spent a round 3 and round 4 pick on Levi Onwuzurike and also Aleem McNeil. You have 2 good guys against the run there in Onwuzurike and McNeil. You also have Michael Brockers in there who they brought over last year. I think that those 3 guys flesh out the middle of your defense a little bit, give you some depth up front, give you some strength, give you some size. I think all 3 of those guys probably back for next season. Cornerback Jeff Okudah. He's really the key guy. That's why he's pictured on the screen here with the graphic, because he needs to have a really good 3rd season. Showed flashes in year 2. Year 1 was a struggle like it is for most young cornerbacks. Year 3, after an injury in year 2, he's got to come back and be the number 1 corner that they need him to be. 3rd overall pick. When you look back at that draft, Joe Burrow missed a year, Chase Young essentially missed a year, and Jeff Okudah missed a year. All 3 of those guys have missed significant time in their careers. Joe Burrow came back better than ever. I expect Chase Young to do the same, but we need to see Jeff Okudah not only come back better, but take a massive step as well. They need him to be that top dog cornerback, because when you look at who else they have there with Amani Oruwariye, he's a really solid CB2 in the NFL, in my opinion. I think he's got really, really good traits, and I think he's someone who you can rely on. And if Okudah is who we thought he would be coming out of Ohio State, you've got a really good 1-2 cornerback room where you can look in a few other areas to try and improve this team. Ifeatu Melifonwu, I like him as well. I think that he can serve a nice role. He's a depth piece in the secondary, and I think he takes a nice jump in year 2 after coming out of Syracuse last year. And for me, one guy I want to highlight that I think they should try and re-sign this offseason is Tracy Walker. He is going to be a free agent. I think that they're going to try and do their best to keep him in that safety room. I think they really like what they have in him. And these are my key guys that they have to have on their roster. All these guys that you've seen on the screen so far today are already re-signed. And I think the 2 guys that I want them to re-sign are Tyrell Crosby for swing tackle depth. And I also want them to try and bring back Tracy Walker. Those are really the 2 guys. When you're a 3-13-1 team, there's not a lot of talent that you have to worry about losing. That's one of the nice things about being a 3-13-1 team. You've got some options. You don't have to necessarily commit to anyone, especially when you have a new regime in there. A lot of these guys, Dan Campbell inherited. So some of them, they're going to get phased out pretty quickly. And I think there's going to be a lot of roster turnover in Detroit, which leads us here to free agency. When we're talking about roster turnover, the Lions are estimated to have around $31 million in cap space this offseason. That is according to Spot Track. And the goals for them would be address these position groups: wide receiver, linebacker, and defensive back. I would love to see them bring in not only 1, but 2 wide receivers if they can. I think if they can't, though, they should emphasize trying to find a real number 1 wide receiver. They need to find a linebacker, someone who can play on the inside and really wreak havoc. In free agency, I think there's a few options there. Even if it's just someone who's going to be a field general for them in the linebacker room, I think there's a lot of value to that. And defensive back, I'd like to see them bring in a 3rd corner. And I would also like to see them bring in a good safety. There's a few good options out there. One that I think a lot of Detroit Lions fans would love to see him play back in Michigan. So we'll see if they can get it done here. Let's look at some of those targets for me. Starting off, wide receiver Allen Robinson, wide receiver Chris Godwin, wide receiver Juju Smith-Schuster, Will Fuller, and also Jamison Crowder. So there's a little bit of variation in here about what they could look to do. Allen Robinson had a real down year for the Chicago Bears this past season. A year ago, had he been able to enter free agency without the franchise tag, probably would have gotten around 4 years, $90 million. This year, I think he's probably looking for a 1-year prove-it deal, and the Lions could line up for that. 1 year, 15 might be enough to get it done, bring him into Detroit, and you have a number 1 option for at least a year, and it gives you a year to reset what you're looking for in the draft. You don't have to rush on a wide receiver. You don't have to panic and overdraft one. And Allen Robinson, maybe he plays really well and wants to stay in Detroit. Doesn't happen a lot that way, but maybe Allen Robinson would be open to that. Chris Godwin, though, is really the one I want to talk about here. He's coming off an injury now, an ACL, but he's younger. He is, I believe, around 25 years old, and I think he does make a lot of sense for the Detroit Lions. Juju Smith-Schuster is the same way. Also coming off an injury-riddled season, but he's younger, 25 years old. For me, the Lions should look at those 2 guys. I think Chris Godwin's going to get around 4 years, $72-ish million if I had to guess. Maybe 4 years, 68. You're looking at that about $18 million mark a year for Chris Godwin, which is a lot to pay. That's a lot of their cap space going out to Chris Godwin. But he's young, fits the timeline. He's going to be playing his best football, hopefully, in the future if he comes back from that ACL rehab. Well, of course, team doctors are going to have to take a look at him before they actually sign him. But given the fact that I think he'll be doing well in his rehab, probably a little bit ahead of schedule and passes his physical, they'll try and bring him in. I think there's a lot of value there. Juju Smith-Schuster, same route, except he's going to be cheaper, but he doesn't necessarily fill that wide receiver 1 that you're looking for if you're Detroit, but maybe you're banking on him and Amon-Ra St. Brown together just being enough that you can hopefully try and find a 3rd wide receiver down the road. That is either a number 1 or another guy who's right along that level, and you got 3 solid wide receivers instead of maybe a true number 1. And I think that's kind of what they're looking for. Jamison Crowder, Will Fuller on here. I don't think Will Fuller is really realistic. For me, though, he's an outside guy who can stretch the field. And Jamison Crowder, only 28 years old. He seems older, but he is only 28. Maybe bring him in for 2 years and see if he can help you working across the middle a little bit. Kind of lost his role with the New York Jets this season, but I think he could still be a nice little value pickup for the Detroit Lions. Probably won't eat up too much of your cap. Probably going to take $5 to $6 million to bring in Jamison Crowder. Then linebackers here. There's a few that I want to highlight. There's one really big drop off here, though, between Jayon Brown and the rest. Jayon Brown is significantly better than the rest pictured on the screen here. He is really good in pass coverage, played for the Tennessee Titans, and really, really valuable for that defense. He's part of the reason why they locked up the 1 seed in the AFC this year. Jayon Brown would be a phenomenal acquisition into Detroit. However, I don't necessarily see that happening. I think Josie Jewell and Anthony Walker Jr. would be two good targets instead for Detroit. If you're looking for linebacker play, Josie Jewell more that field general type, and Anthony Walker Jr. a little bit more athleticism. Put him in the middle, and I think he does help you. Now, I know the player that everyone's getting excited about here, especially Detroit Lions fans, is safety Jabril Peppers. He's a free agent this offseason. I think the Giants are going to do everything they can to hold on to him, but they've got a new regime coming in. Dave Gettleman, of course, retired. Joe Judge fired. So Jabril Peppers very easily could find his way out of New York, and the Lions, I think, would be one of the top suitors for him. They badly need safeties. He's young, and he played in Michigan for his college football. So I think Jabril Peppers does make a ton of sense here. Try and bring him in to the fold, and he instantly becomes one of your better defensive playmakers in general for this Lions football team. And I think that's really what they need, is a few more playmakers. Let me know in the comment section what you think about some of these free agent targets for the Detroit Lions. I think that if they can come away with two of these guys, specifically two of the better guys, like let's say Jabril Peppers and Allen Robinson, or Jabril Peppers, Chris Godwin, even Jabril Peppers, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Josie Jewell as a combination of three, you're looking at an upgraded team. And you also have some draft picks, which is what we're going to transition into here. The NFL draft. First round, they have picks 2, and they also have a pick between number 22 and 32, depending on if the LA Rams win or lose, and where they end up finding themselves. Second round, they have pick 34. Third round, they have picks 66 and 97. Fourth round, they do not have a fourth round pick as of January 12th, the day I'm recording this. Fifth round pick is pick 177. Sixth round is going to be around pick 181 and 217. The order's not fully fleshed out yet. And then seventh round, pick 229 and pick 241. So they've got a ton of assets here. You're looking at 5 picks on day 3. You're looking at 3 picks on day 2 and 2 picks on day 1. So they have a lot of assets. They've got a lot of ways to improve this team. When you're looking at that, that is 11 total picks in this year's draft. That is a really, really good number to have. And I think they're going to really improve their football team. Going into NFL draft targets now, for me, early rounds, I think pick 2, you're going to start with Aiden Hutchinson or Kayvon Thibodeau. They're going to draft an edge. I would be surprised and absolutely shocked, honestly, if they do not. Aiden Hutchinson out of Michigan, of course, that'd be a really good feel-good story. Been playing his college ball in Ann Arbor, comes over to Detroit. That does make a lot of sense to me. And they need front 7 help badly. I also think Kayvon Thibodeau, if the Jaguars were to go with Aiden Hutchinson, Kayvon Thibodeau maybe has a higher ceiling and is a really good player himself. Kayvon Thibodeau probably goes off the board 1, I'm guessing right now, either him or Evan Neal, actually the tackle from Alabama. Maybe there's a trade up for the Jaguars too, where they try and trade out a pick 1 for a team that really badly wants a certain quarterback in this class. I don't necessarily see that happening, but it is a potential outcome. And I think here, if you're Detroit, you really are choosing between Aiden Hutchinson and Kayvon Thibodeau. I don't really think there's a super wrong answer. For me, I would opt for Kayvon Thibodeau, but I think there is value to both. Aiden Hutchinson played really great this year. He dominated Ohio State and was in the Heisman running for a reason. He's a really, really darn good football player. Then with pick 30, or the second first round pick, and then also the pick 34 there, second round pick early, I think they're going to look at a combination of these guys. Wide receiver Chris Olave, wide receiver Treylon Burks, maybe another wide receiver in there could be like Jahan Dotson from Penn State. But then I also have 2 quarterbacks listed. Kenny Pickett, Malik Willis, and I also think quarterback Desmond Ridder, who's pictured here in the Bearcats uniform. Those 3 are also draft targets, and I'm going to explain why here in a second. First off, I want to start with the wide receivers, Chris Olave, Treylon Burks, or Jahan Dotson. The reason I have those guys in there is because those are the guys that could potentially become number 1 options. When you're considering, hey, maybe we sign Juju Smith-Schuster and bring in another wide receiver in the draft, you have a really good trio all of a sudden. And then it's just about trying to find the quarterback long-term, because Jared Goff, quite frankly, isn't the quarterback long-term. However, he's under contract now. So I know some of you are going to say, well, why would we draft a quarterback if Jared Goff's under contract? Whoa. Why don't we just take one next year? Bryce Young next year. We should try and do that. We shouldn't do it now. I'm telling you right now, no NFL head coach, no NFL GM, no front office in the NFL thinks the way that fans do, where, oh, we'll be back here next year. We should draft one in the first round next year, really early in the draft. I'm going to tell you right now, if Dan Campbell went up to management, went up to his owner and said, oh, let's not take a QB this year because next year we'll have a top 3 pick again. And then the owner's going to say, wait, what? A top 3 pick again? You're planning on us losing a bunch again? That is not a good look for a head coach, for a GM, for a front office. That is not how football works. They don't plan that way. The NBA has a little bit more long-term planning like that. The NFL does not plan that way. Every single week, they are trying to get a win. That is their goal. That is their plan. They do not want to pick top 3 again next year. So if they really do like a quarterback, a guy like Malik Willis, Kenny Pickett, maybe Matt Corral, or even Desmond Ridder, who's pictured here, they're going to take him at either pick with the second first-round pick from the Rams or pick 34. If there's a guy there they like, they're going to draft him. Also, some middle to late round targets. These are guys round 3 to 7 that I could see going. Henry To'o from Alabama. He would be a huge addition into that linebacker room. Christian Harris as well could be another guy, but I think he'll probably go in the second round, maybe the end of the first even. Chad Muma, linebacker out of Wyoming. Really athletic. He can be a thumper. I like his long-term upside. I think he's really projectable into the NFL with his size, speed, and athleticism. Jalen Petrie, a safety from Baylor. I think that's a good way for them to round out their safety room. Take him in the 3rd round, maybe 4th round if he falls. Verone McKinley, safety out of Oregon. I have him as a 4th, maybe 5th round safety. So there's another middle to late round option for you. Justin Ross, if they don't go with a wide receiver in day 1 or day 2, Justin Ross could be a really nice pickup in round 4. Romeo Doubs out of Penn State, or actually Nevada, excuse me. That is a typo. He should be out of Nevada. He's been one of the top options for Carson Strong all year long. He is a really good option for round 5 potentially. And then Bailey Zapp, quarterback out of Western Kentucky, actually broke Joe Burrow's touchdown record this past season. And if they don't take a QB in rounds 1 through 3, I think they will take one a little bit later on, round 6, maybe round 7. Bailey Zapp could be the guy there for them. A lot of production, and maybe they give him a little bit of run in his rookie year, depending on Jared Goff's play next year. I could see him taking some starts away from Jared Goff if they did draft him, just if Jared Goff is struggling. So I think there is a lot of options for the Detroit Lions. Lions fans, let me know your NFL draft targets below, because I think there's probably some guys I'm missing, some guys you think would really help. Let me know. I would love to learn from you guys. And here now, at the end of the video, thank you guys so much for watching. Leave a like. Please hit that subscribe button. I can't emphasize enough. If you're not subscribed, do it now. It really does help us out. Lets us know that you guys are loving the content coming out on the channel. Lions fans, you got a lot to be excited about. Hopefully you enjoyed today's video, and hopefully you'll enjoy next season. Thanks guys so much for watching. Check out our other videos, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.